Boy, that will clear your sinuses. Good morning. It's good to be with you. Thank you for being here, and welcome to our Sunday service with UUSS. Whether you're participating on Zoom or here in person, we're glad you're here. I'm Roger Jones, serving as one of the ministers here. Last Sunday, I preached from home on Zoom because I had been sick the week before, and today I'm happy to be back in the pulpit at church and happy to be preaching again. What is my sermon title? It is Living with Intention, Perfection or Presence. With me in the sanctuary are the Reverend Lucy Bunch, Worship Associate Ginny Johnson, Music Director Anthony Tavianini, Pianist Irina Tchantceva, and we thank Ann Haas and Thomas Goff for their special music. Our technical producers are Colleen Emrys and Ivan Cavallero. Our mission statement says, we come together to deepen our lives and to be a force for healing in the world. We invite you to explore all the ways that we live out this mission. Our weekly message email comes out at the end of every week, and you can find it and a lot more activities posted on our website. You can find this week's events listed on the blue sheet, which looks like this, which is on the back table and on the welcome table. And you can find it online. If you'd like to follow the order of service today, a printed order of service is on the table by the back door, and on Zoom there's a link to the order of service in the chat. If you're new to UUSS, we extend a special welcome to you. We're glad you're here. We hope you will fill out a newcomer's form. You can do that at our website at uuss.org/newcomers, but if you're here in person, you can fill it out at the welcome table, and we look forward to connecting with you. Please join us after the service. If you're here in person, we'll have coffee and refreshments on the patio, thanks to our volunteers. And if you're here on Zoom, hang around for Coffee Hub. There will be about 12 minutes of conversation to get acquainted and reflect on the service through the magic of breakout rooms in Zoom, so there'll be smaller groups. Next Sunday is the first Sunday of the month, so our youth groups will be meeting here at the church, led by adult volunteers. The junior high youth group meets before church. Senior high youth group meets after the service. For elementary age children, our Soul Kids program takes place before our Sunday services every Sunday on Zoom. It starts every week at 9 a.m., and you can get the link for Soul Kids from Miranda Massa, our religious education coordinator. And next Sunday is also when Reverend Lucy leads a walking meditation on our labyrinth outside in the meadow at 9:30. It's wonderful to see the new art exhibit on these walls of the sanctuary by artist Bobby Baldwin. And if you're not coming to church for services, you could contact the office to arrange for a time to visit the sanctuary by yourself on a weekday to see the art. But if you're here, we hope you see it. So now please check your cell phone to ensure that it's on silent mode or turned off. If you're here in person, this can avoid embarrassment. And if you're at home, turning off distractions can help you be more present with one another for the service. Again, we're glad you're here. If you're home, this is the time to get your candle or chalice ready for the chalice lighting. And Reverend Lucy is next.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for making your way here this morning, and good morning, everyone on Zoom. We're so glad that you're tuned in. I always like to imagine this congregation is just extending out into the whole community and around the world. We have people who are Zooming in from all sorts of places, so welcome, everyone. Our chalice lighting words this morning are adapted from the Reverend Laura Thompson. Across the distance, the light from within me shines, sending love to all. Across the distance, your light is fuel that warms me and helps to keep my own light burning. Near and far, together we lift the light of truth-seeking. Near and far, we share the warmth of love and courage. Together, let us keep the flame of community burning bright.
As we gather this morning, we appreciate both the grand and the small in one another and in our world. Let us stand and sing for the beauty of the earth.
At this time in our service, we bring our joys and our sorrows, our worries, grief, and gratitude to this beloved community. For those of you online, if you would like to tell this community what is on your heart, please open the chat box at the bottom of your screen and type in what it is you'd like to share. Those of you in the sanctuary may share among yourselves as we all enjoy a gift of music from Irina. Thanks to all of you who shared your joys and sorrows with this community. I have some sad news today of 2 deaths in our church family. Our member and board president, Tony Darling, died in her home last Tuesday. Her son shared that she was surrounded by family and held in a net of love. Please keep Tony's family in your prayers. Also, longtime UUSS member Anna Andrews died Friday evening. Anna was 90 years old, and she joined our community in 1963. These are 2 painful and difficult losses. We will keep you posted about memorial plans for Tony and Anna, as well as Jack Kennedy, who passed away on January 3rd of this year. We've experienced many deaths in this congregation in the past couple of years, many deaths in our country as well. We've now surpassed 875,000 people who have died from COVID, many of those deaths preventable. This is the population of the city of San Francisco. Many of us have experienced loss during this pandemic time, and these 3 individuals that I have named in our community have touched many lives, and you have been touched by many people in your lives who have passed away. When someone that we love dies, we grieve their loss, but we also remember and grieve all the losses of all those who have touched our lives and passed away. Death is woven through our lives like a thread that connects us to all who have come before and all who will come after us, and a thread that connects us to all of us who have suffered the loss of a loved one. Let's take 3 deep breaths together and release each one with a sigh. Ooh. Now, I suggest that you bring to mind someone you love who is no longer with us. Just let whoever it is that come into your mind and heart and sit with a loving memory of this person. And when you are ready, I will leave a space to speak the name of this person out loud. Let their name be heard and held in the love of this community, where everyone here has been touched by death in some way, and each share the human experience of grief and loss. Now let us speak the names of our beloved dead into our space this morning. Adele, Jean-Robert, Tony Darling. We honor all those we have lost with gratitude for the gifts that they have given us. Let's take 3 deep breaths together and let them out with a sigh. Now let us reflect on life. Let us reflect on the gifts and the joy of living. Let us remember each day is a gift of life, and we have the capacity to be present to that gift. What makes your life worth living? What makes you come alive? Bring to your mind that which brings you joy, and when you are ready, name it into this space, and let your joy uplift the others present here today. You may speak your joy into our space. Walks with my dog, family, community, all the good things, all the kind people. Let these joys named uplift us here today and send that joy and joy for the meaning of life out into our world. Life and death, joy and suffering are woven fine into our lives. May we be held in support by this community and all those that we love and care in this great interdependent web. Let us live fully, love deeply, and grieve thoroughly. And now let us take a minute of silence for our own reflections. Blessed be. Let us remain seated and sing together Spirit of Life in both English and Spanish.
Good morning. This morning we're talking about intention, perfection, and what happens when we make mistakes. I quickly realized that much of this is learned early. I grew up in a household with high standards. My dad was the person who displayed this the most. I saw him take out work that he had completed, rip it all out, and start over again so his product could be perfect. As I was growing up, my folks didn't say we had to have all A's or be the best baseball player or whatever. They said, do the best you can. So that's what I did. I worked my fanny off on everything. I got good grades, I was an athlete, I played in the band and the orchestra and the county band, participated in Girl Scouts, I was a Gold Scout, and edited my high school newspaper. I was a high achiever to say the least. Oh, and I had to be home at dinner 2 nights a week. That was my dad's rule, probably directed to me. Only years later did my sister and I discover that we had both interpreted the best you can as doing 100%, 120%, 100% of the time. That doesn't work. You can do it for one game or one project, but frankly, it's setting yourself up for mistakes, failure, and exhaustion. Luckily, when my mom was still alive, we asked her about it. She grimaced and said, "Oh dear, we were trying to take the pressure off, not the other way around. What we really meant is you should try hard and put in effort, but not the best always." You could see my sister and I both relax. We laughed and agreed that we had lived through it. Wasn't a bad coping technique, and we can now take a more reasonable approach. It makes mistakes much more manageable, and I've learned to be kind and forgiving of myself and others. Word processing was one of those things. Some of you don't remember the old days when cut and paste literally meant cutting pieces of paper and taping it around, and retyping the paper again. Okay, word processing, you could change one word and it would be fine. Wow, somebody gave me a gift with a big red bow. I can sometimes see familiar behavior in others. I live in a senior community and run the knitting group. We have one lovely lady that knits beautifully and quickly too. Her behavioral pattern, unfortunately, is to start a project, and after inches are done, something is wrong, of course, a long way ago, in her eyes, and she rips it all out to start over again. If she happens to ask my opinion, I look, and usually I don't see the problem. It's fine. I smile and say, "It's fine, really. It's only a blanket, and no one will notice, ever." Maybe someday she'll understand you can do your best, but you don't have to give 120%, 100% of the time.
This reading is by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk who died this month at the age of 95. This is from his book, The Long Road Turns to Joy, a guide to walking meditation, which was published in 1996. The Buddha was asked, "What do you and your disciples practice?" And he replied, "We sit, we walk, and we eat." The questioner continued, "But sir, everyone sits, walks, and eats." The Buddha told him, "When we sit, we know we are sitting. When we walk, we know we are walking. And when we eat, we know we are eating." Most of the time, we are lost in the past or carried away by the future. When we are mindful and in touch with the present moment, our understanding deepens, and we begin to feel acceptance, joy, peace, and love. In Buddhism, there is a word which means wishlessness or aimlessness. The idea is that we do not put anything ahead of ourselves and run after it. When we practice walking meditation, we just enjoy the walking with no particular aim or destination. Our walking is not a means to an end. We walk for the sake of walking. A.J. Must, a minister and labor activist, said, "There is no way to peace. Peace is the way, end quote. Walking in mindfulness brings us peace and joy and makes our lives real. Why rush? Our final destination is only the graveyard. Why not walk in the direction of life, enjoying peace in each moment, in every step? There is no need to hurry. Enjoy each step. We have already arrived. The war in Vietnam caused countless injuries to the minds and bodies of people on both sides. Many soldiers and civilians lost arms or legs and now cannot join their palms together to pay respects to the Buddha or practice walking meditation. Last year, 2 such people came to our retreat center, and we had to find an alternate way for them to practice walking meditation. I asked each of them to sit in a chair and choose someone who was practicing walking meditation and become one with that person, following their steps in mindfulness. In this way, they made peaceful and serene steps together with their partners, even though they themselves could not walk. I saw tears of joy in their eyes. We who have 2 legs can easily practice walking meditation. We must not forget to be grateful. We walk for ourselves, and we walk for those who cannot walk. We walk for all living beings, past, present, and future. Every path can be a path for walking meditation, from tree-lined roadsides and fragrant rice paddies to the back alleys of Mostar and the mine-filled roads of Cambodia. When you are awake, you will not hesitate to enter any path. When you open yourself in this way, you will find companions on the path of awakening who share your insight. They will be with you, side by side, to alleviate the world's suffering. Imagine that you and I are astronauts and we have landed on the moon, and we find that we cannot return to Earth because our ship's engine is broken beyond repair. We will run out of oxygen before Mission Control can send another ship to rescue us. We have only 2 days to live. At that moment, what would make us happier than to return to our beautiful planet and walk on it? When confronted with death, we realize the preciousness of every moment on our green Earth. Imagine now that we astronauts have somehow miraculously survived and been transported back to Earth. Let us celebrate our joy by moving on our beautiful planet together with deep peace and concentration.
Thank you, Irina, that was lovely. Our congregation's mission statement says, "We come together to deepen our lives and be a force for healing in the world." We live this mission in many ways, including the practice of generosity by giving half of each Sunday's offering to an organization that is working to heal the world. Our community partner for the month of January is Black Child Legacy Campaign, a community-driven movement working to reduce deaths of African American children in Sacramento County. They are tackling the issues of prenatal care, infant sleep, child abuse and neglect, and the third-party homicides from gang violence. We have been partnered with this group for several years and are supporting their efforts in the Arden Arcade area. Please give generously in support of this important organization. On the slide, you can see the ways that you may contribute electronically or by mailing a check. It's posted in the chat box, too. For those of you in the sanctuary this morning, we will be passing the baskets. If you would prefer not to touch the baskets, please just cross your arms in front and let the people near you know that you would like to be passed over. Does that? Never mind. Please remember that everyone can set up a text to make an electronic payment right from their seat, whether it's here or at home. Thank you very much for your generosity. The morning's offering will now be taken. The words together, please. May the spirit of gratitude bless and multiply all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. Blessed be.
The point of living with intention is to give us direction and motivation for our choices and our actions. We do this for the sake of our own well-being, and we join with others to be a force for healing in the world. Too often, however, the worthy aim of living with intention can be sidelined or shadowed by expectations for perfection. Sometimes these expectations are unspoken or unacknowledged. As we heard in Ginny's personal story, we can hear such expectations even when they are not intended. Do the best you can, the parents told the kids. The parents had meant to be affirming and accepting, but as she said, Ginny took it as an invisible goal and an exhausting one. Here's a definition for perfectionism. It is the pursuit of unreasonable standards for ourselves and the demand for unrealistic performance by others. Perfectionism can be a compulsion to show ourselves to be winners, but it's a game nobody can win with enduring satisfaction. You have to compete over and over again. You can't win at perfectionism once and for all. This makes it a loser's game. Perfectionism separates us. Feeling the need to prove ourselves as worthy, let alone superior, is isolating. We may strive to feel worthy enough to belong, yet the striving adds to the sense of separation. When I was growing up, I didn't hear expectations to perform perfectly, but I felt unworthy and that I didn't have much to offer. If I didn't feel I could perform something well, let alone perfectly, I didn't even try. To avoid feeling vulnerable, I'd opt for being invisible as much as possible. In some school subjects, I did excel, and some of them came easily to me. Even with recognition for those achievements, I was haunted by what I couldn't do or wouldn't try to do. And even with my achievements, there were always other people who did better. In their success, I saw a negation of my own abilities, my own worth. So I think you might agree that perfectionism is hard on us, and even though we agree that it's not good, it always seems to hang around our necks. Every time I've given a sermon about perfectionism over the years, I've gotten a response that it was good to hear and that it is a real burden for us. But our nods or our laughs of self-recognition have not brought us lasting serenity. Perfectionism seems to be steeped in our culture. And in the United States, this means the cultural dominance of whiteness. In 1999, Kenneth Jones and Tema Okun wrote an essay about the characteristics of the culture of white supremacy and how they show up in organizations and human relationships in this country. In 2021, Okun revised and expanded the essay into a website. And she explains that a culture of white supremacy shows up in many ways, and one of them is perfectionism. In our culture, Okun writes, perfectionism plays out in organizations and in families when little or no appreciation is expressed among people for the work that others are doing. It's more common to point out how the person or the work is inadequate, or to talk about the inadequacies of the person's work without even talking directly to them. In a culture of perfectionism, mistakes are seen as reflections of a person's worth instead of what they are, which is just mistakes they've made. We are cursed with confusion between making a mistake and being a mistake. Oken writes that such a culture trains all of us to internalize attitudes and behaviors that do not serve any of us. This includes the belief that we can be perfect, or we should try to be. But this raises the questions: who decides what perfect is? Who defines perfection? And of course, why would we want to be perfect? In this culture, we have been hoodwinked about what is really important. She wants to be clear. She says, I am not saying anything about anybody's abilities. I'm also not saying anything about what we have to do to excel in our work or any other areas of our lives, if that is important to us. In contrast to our intentions and our efforts to be our best selves, whoever we are, perfectionism is a burden and a barrier to progress and growth. An atmosphere of perfectionism keeps us from considering and reflecting on lessons learned from efforts made and from mistakes made. Perfectionism keeps us from examining our attitudes about what it is that's considered a mistake and why it's considered a mistake. By internalizing perfectionism, a person neglects to appreciate their own good work and more often will point out their faults instead of learning from each experience. Our inner critic accepts the standards of the dominant culture, and we don't appreciate our work or our own worth. Given the persistence of this part of our culture, I've been thinking about two practices that we might use in order to shrink the power of perfectionism. One of them is the practice of just being present. When we're haunted by the shadow of perfectionism, we may not be mindful or aware of what we're doing or of how we are experiencing the activity. The reading that Lucy provided today quoted the Buddha speaking about his community's practice. When we sit, we know we're sitting. When we walk, we know we are walking. When we eat, we know we are eating. Extending this concept, the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh wrote about washing the dishes mindfully. The practice is not the product of a spotless dish, but merely to experience that you are washing a dish. One could say the same about cooking a meal. I don't cook regularly, but it's my impression that the people who enjoy doing it enjoy being present and aware of the process of cooking more than they are driven to get to the end result. I think this must have been how Thich Nhat Hanh thought about his nonviolent activism for peace in Vietnam, his native country. He paid attention to every part of every action of civil disobedience, every speech at every demonstration, every action of hospitality to refugees and military veterans alike. As you heard, Thich Nhat Hanh passed away recently at age 95. In his long life, he made the practice of mindfulness accessible to people of various faiths around the world and people of no faith, especially in the United States and in France. Any ordinary activity can be a way to focus your awareness and your attention. Through attention to the present moment, he said, we can cultivate peace. The simplicity of this is deceptive. And for Thich Nhat Hanh, living by it has not been easy. Born in 1926, he became a monk at age 16. In the 1960s, he worked to appeal to the international community to stop supporting the war in Vietnam. He established relief organizations to rebuild villages. He started the School of Youth for Social Service. However, because he spoke out against violence and because he refused to take a side in the war, he was banned from Vietnam by both the non-communist and communist governments. He moved to France, which had been the colonial ruler of his native land for much of his life. He led international efforts to help refugees from Vietnam. Around the world, he conducted retreats for American veterans of the war, psychotherapists, artists, environmental activists, and children. In 1982, he founded the International Plum Village Community, a retreat center and a monastery in southwestern France. Plum Village has trained a new generation of teachers in the practice of engaged Buddhism. And engaged Buddhism begins with mindful awareness. The practice of being present and mindful of our actions can be available to us in ambitious public projects and in the most ordinary of private activities. The lack of mindfulness leads to the pain of perfectionism. Writing in the Sun magazine, Valerie Reimers recalled that her mother had loved sewing, having taught herself how to do it at age 4. Reimer's mother had made her own outfits and costumes and her own wedding dress, and then she made quilts and clothing for her own children. As a mother, she shared her passion with her daughter, Valerie. In doing so, however, she brought too much pressure. Many years later, Reimers said, "My mother surprised me with a confession. She said she was sorry for having insisted upon perfection when she tried to teach me to sew. She had come to realize that her demands had discouraged me. They deprived me of the joy that sewing had brought to her. If she could do it over," she said, "she would be less insistent on perfection and let me simply enjoy making something." As Thich Nhat Hanh said, "The key to joy and peace is not perfection, but presence." Awareness of the present moment can be a source of joy and beauty and peace. This brings me to another practice for unlearning perfectionism, and that is to cultivate imperfectionism. This is a new term so far as I know, imperfectionism. What it means is the intentional recognition of our flawed nature as human beings. It is an owning of the oops inherent in our behaviors nearly every day that we live. It is an affirmation of our mistake-making inclinations and the ability to learn from our mistakes. Tema Okun says, "Learning from our mistakes is how we grow." To be sure, honesty calls for us to recognize the harms that we cause, the wrongs that we commit, the acts or words we wish we could undo. Integrity calls for making apologies and for setting things right when that is possible. As Okun writes, "We grow strong when we are allowed to be vulnerable with ourselves and each other." The practice of imperfection involves owning that we are imperfect, that we can't do everything, and even when we do what we can, it won't always come out to our liking or to the liking of others. Yet as we recognize these realities, imperfectionism includes affirmation of the gifts we do possess, the celebration of the efforts we do make, and appreciation of the presence we bring to whatever we do. In contrast to a focus on what's wrong or what's incomplete, we practice appreciating what's useful and what's helpful. We can replace a culture of demands and complaints with words of gratitude and a show of appreciation. This is the practice of imperfectionism. The Reverend Pamela Phillips is a UU minister in Virginia. She asks, what if we were to intentionally take the risk of making mistakes? What if intentionally we were to abandon striving for perfection, not only accept imperfection in ourselves and others, but celebrate imperfection? That's imperfectionism. In the quest of living with intention, instead of striving for perfection, we can practice awareness of where we are and what we are doing. We can appreciate and celebrate imperfection. It is countercultural to do this. It is anti-racist to do this. And it is liberating. With its threats of judgment from outside us and the toxins of the critic inside us, perfectionism isolates us. It separates us from one another. We cannot thrive in isolation. Imperfectionism is a blessing because it means that we need one another. No matter how good we may be at this or that activity, no matter how much we own or how much we earn, we are not sufficient unto ourselves. We rely on others and they rely on us. We do this not to fix each other, but to help each other. We rely on others and they rely on us to appreciate one another and to embrace one another. Together, we embrace our humanity and we celebrate it. So may it be. Blessed be, and amen.
May we celebrate each day the imperfections in our lives and recognize that perfect or present, life calls us on. Please stand and sing.
Into
Now we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the power of commitment, or the fire of community, or the warmth of love, or all those good things. We extinguish this flame.
We invite you to reach out to one another, reach out. If you're home, reach out to us. May you depart in peace and return in joy. For all who see God, may God go with you. For all who embrace life, may life return your affection. For all who seek a right path, may a way be found and the courage to take it, step by step, breath by breath, moment by moment. Blessed be. Namaste.